worlddata.com. And if you look at the word, I mean, nature has arranged this in this 29% of land, the habitable land is only 20%. So if your habitable land is only 20% out of 29, then 10.5% land is only cultivable land, and 8% of this is used for livestock farming, and only 2.4%. This is data as far as we have in context of India. So this 2.4% is used for crop farming. So we have to understand what is it in such a huge world. Only 2.4% is used for crop farming, 8% is used for cattle farming. Now you have, when we come to the calorie content that we get out of this percentages, so 83% of the calories we get it from crop farming, 17% calories we get it from cattle farming, and again in terms of proteins that we get 63% protein from crops farming and 33% protein from cattle farming. So with just 2.4% of the world's land, we have 18% of world's population. We are 30% of world's cattle population. We have 8% of world's bioresources, and 33% or 1/3 of these bioresources are only found in the world and nowhere in the world. They are only found in the India, and repeatedly India has been given awards by different global bodies for its capacity to preserve bioresources. So how is that 18% population on a 2.4% land, and with the 30% of global population is able to feed itself? That is a big question that we have to ask. So this is a question every Indian university and every institution, government bodies, and we will need only 40% of the agricultural land that we have. So this is not my data, but this is the word in the word in worlddata.com, which is undisputed source of information. Unfortunately, no one brings these facts, including governments, universities, or IITs. The only thing is we also eat meat. It is as much as about 60 to 65%, but meat is not our main food. Meat is just one part of our whole meals. It is just a sabji or a part of our main. Our main food is cereal. The thing that I want to emphasize is, like if you look at the environment damage or the gases, greenhouse gases being emitted by beef is almost 25 times than the cereals. So that is the reason why we have more pollution, or it is more detrimental to the environment. It is the reverse in the West. Like our meat consumption today is about 3.1 kg per head. It is about 109 kg per head in America and 84 kg per head in Europe. They have the most environmentally damaging eating habits. So we have the most environmentally compatible food habits. So that is where our lifestyle is in a way go hand in hand with a sustainable existence. Okay. Now coming back to cultural economics. So when we say it's not that we are comfortable only with each other, we are also comfortable with every living creature in the world. So that is the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is about environmental culture. Now a little bit of cultural economics, if we go if you have a look at it, the cattle population of India is around 300 million. It is 257 million in Brazil, 95 million in China, 94 million in America, 89 million in European Union. Then how are we taking care of these cattle 3 or 4 times the number. Not that the cattle is just a edible proposition. It is our friend. It is part of our agricultural activities. It is part of our home, and it is also worship here. So we now understand. Otherwise, why should we keep 300 million cattle and livestock of nearly 500 million? So these are implications of the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. In fact, the most sustainable living symbiotic life happens in villages. So I think that is where we learn the importance of value of life. For example, in our villages, you can't cut a tree if somebody is pregnant in the village. So it is true with many villages. You have to go and take the permission of the pregnant woman's family to cut a tree. So these are not things which you can cultivate by education. This you cannot cultivate by mere giving lectures or reading books. This is part of our Indian DNA. So this is what is when Prime Minister spoke about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. He just did not speak about what was stated in our Vedas or Upanishads, but it is a functioning reality. So this is the first point, like coexisting with all living beings. So now we will come to the second thing. So if you analyze the societal values that add to the sustainability, because of these values, we take care of our parents, we take care of our brothers and sisters, we educate them, and it's because we are in a relation-based society and not a contract-based society like the Westerners. We are not living together by a contract. We have not agreed to live together. We live together because we like being or living together. So these are problems. There are difficulties which would give but somebody has to give this credit for this kind of arrangement only to the women of India. So they bore the burden, they bear the difficulties, they do savings, they do expenditures. So our living style itself is very important contributor to the idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So if you don't know how to live in a family, you don't know how to live as a nation, and you cannot certainly live as a global family. So the idea of family, its integrated values, the difficulties in living together, all this requires a cultural orientation, shaping up of our mind and subordination of individual for a larger cause. So this is the fundamental basis of Indian political economy. For the welfare of the family, the individual yields his rights. For the welfare of the village, the family yields its rights. And finally, for the welfare of the nation, the village yields its right. So that is the idea of nation first. So there is something very different about India. This is a manifesting societal security. We take care of our parents, we take care of family obligations, we educate our children. But this is not what is happening in the West. All the responsibilities are transferred to the government. Our families have been nationalized, the children are not being educated by the parents. Hence, with the integration of these two concepts, environmental culture and cultural economics, there is unusual way for us Indians that marks the time-tested approach towards sustainable living and sustainable developments as well. So this is the first part of my talk, wherein we are talking about the Indian values, the Indian ethos, so that we have, so which help in a way have a sustainable living with the or in sync with the nature, rather in sync with the environment. I'll just take a while before I just go to the second part. And in the second part, like typical a session wherein we talk about the technicalities of sustainable architecture. So it is always about man overpowering nature. So this is some of the images wherein man brutally, rather brutally I would say, has destroyed the nature in a way, irreversible nature. So then our man, driven by his obsession of continuous growth, has completely ignored in this development process that he has ruined our one and only home, our planet. So this is a kind of situation that we have. So we have designed some of the buildings which are in a way not usable itself. Like, so we talk about this house giving protection from all the vagaries of the climate, but unfortunately, if you look at the usage of these existing buildings that we have designed, so we have people coming out and using these outer spaces rather than the inside. So we have huge, what you say, like air conditions. We have air conditioned spaces. So we have destroyed by mining and other things, natural resources, and we have literally lost in the concrete jungle. Like, so we don't. There is hardly anything green about this. There are hardly any trees. So one, as a designer, as a person concerned with the sustainability, so there is hardly any scope for such things that man is doing. Like, so even the cities have been inhabited, and there is a very stark contrast between luxurious life and pathetic life. Then we have destroyed our natural resources like water, and same thing. So it is because of these activities that we have. So we are the source of all this. Like, so these are some of the images where the intervention of man in the natural process. Then why it is necessary to talk about this sustainability? Like, so if you look at the buildings, so they account for 70% of freshwater withdrawals and 25% of wood harvest, 33% carbon dioxide emissions, and 40% material and energy use. So what is it like, how is that the activities of mankind disturbing this nature? So we have global warming because of this urbanization, we have depleting our natural resources, we have created the water scarcity, and we are the cause for climate change as well. This ongoing rate of growth and we deal with its impacts are of great concern. So greenhouse emissions has increased by 30-folds in 2016 and continues to grow at a rate of 60%. The solution to this cannot be a local solution. So it must be a global solution. So this again depicting something like globalization is increasing widespread, adopting culture through architecture duplication, technology-made duplication of the same, identifiable architectures in buildings and cities. Like, so as discussed earlier, so these are the contributory factors for greenhouse greenhouse gas emissions, sector-wise and again country-wise as well. So where is the concept of this sustainability? Like, so sustainability is a broad and complex concept, which is a major issue in building industry. The idea of sustainability involves enhancing the quality of life, allowing people to live in a healthy environment with improved social, economical, and environmental conditions. So why it is sustainable? I mean, how does this sustainable design help? Like, so one can see in hospitals, we have early discharges, like almost to extent of 2.5 day early discharges. And in terms of offices, we have increased productivity, so to the extent of 2 to 16%. Then in terms of retail spaces, there has been increase in sales per square feet. And factories, of course, we have increased production because of this sustainable way of designing. Then how is that this sustainability can be achieved? Like, so a new renaissance in architecture would be to create a balance between nature, natural ways, and modern technology. So if one has to define this sustainable development is a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. Then if you look at the pillars of this sustainability, so it has to have that economic benefit, it has to have the environmental benefit and social benefits as well. So in terms of economical benefits, it has to become eligible for available incentives, reduce annual energies. So I mean, these are typical things that we find as far as sustainability is concerned. Now, what are the methods of achieving this sustainable design? Like, so in terms of economic resources, we need to have energy conservation, we need to have water conservation, we need to have material conservations. Then life cycle design, it has to be from pre-building stage and again during the building phase and post-building phase. And the reason that gets it's more important because the other day we have had a talk about smart cities, like wherein one of the resource persons, he was talking about smart mobilities, he was talking about smart traffic management and other things. But ultimately, so we have created a problem that we are trying to solve it. Like, again, the smart cities solutions may not be a viable solution economically as well. So we are talking about a smart city for Hubli, but again, it is only 14% of the whole Hubli is covered as against the whole city itself. We are under the notion that the smart city is applicable to the whole city, but that is not the case. It is only 14% of the total area that they have taken up. So in a way, it is expensive. In a way, they are all mitigating measures rather than solving these problems in the inception stage itself. So what are the elements that can have in sustainable architecture? So we can think of these green roofs, we can have solar shingles, then pop houses, the rainwater harvesting, then using recyclable materials like container buildings and other things like that. So in terms of principles of sustainable architecture, so we have to heat the building with sun energy, solar energy. The small is beautiful, energy efficiency, conservation of water, use of local materials, and this recycling the materials, so forth. These are like the typical things that one has to look at the sustainability. Then in terms of green buildings, like, so what are the advantages? Like, so there is a reduction of energy usage from 24% to 50% almost. So there is a reduced carbon dioxide emissions to the tune of 33 to 39%. Then there is a reduced usage of water to the extent of 40%. Then there is a reduction in the solid waste to the tune of 70%. So the results do matter. Like, if you look at some of the green rated buildings, like if you look at the green building with a LEED gold, it can add up to a cost of the building to an extent of 5%. It may be a little bit more expensive than an ordinary building, but the savings in terms of energy saving is almost more than 30%. And the return on this is, the payback is going to be in just 3 years. So there are advantages. There could be an initial cost of initial cost, but you will get the things back in very shorter period. Now, what are the things that we are looking at? The reduction in building potable water to the extent of 33%, reduction in water use for the landscape is 60%, wood products, usage of wood products rather at 87%, then reuse of demolition and constructed waste is 94%. And when we look at these pictures, like these are the images that we have taken. I mean, they are on in the public domain. I don't claim to be these my pictures. I don't have any copyrights, but this content is available in the public domain. So these are the images taken during the lockdown slides. So the pandemic has taught us a very great lesson in terms of if there is no intervention as far as the natural, with the environment, definitely it can get to its glory in a very short period. So that is the lesson that we have learned during this pandemic as well. So this is a beautiful marine drive. Otherwise, it would not be so beautiful with all the traffic and the pollution that we have there. So sustainable architecture is a general term that describes environmental conscious design techniques in the field of architecture. In the broader context, sustainable architecture seeks to minimize the negative environmental impact of the buildings by enhancing efficiency by moderations in the use of materials, energy, and development space. So again, these are some of the things like, so most simply, the idea of sustainability or ecological design is to ensure that our actions and decisions today don't inhibit the opportunities of the future generations. So architecture must not fight with the nature, but should seek to partner with it. So what are the approaches that we have? So sustainability could have two basic approaches. The first one, naturalistic or the passive one, and the second one is artificial or the active one. The later is, as I said, I was discussing about smart cities, is energy driven and can be seen largely as what could be termed as second level or sometimes even as a remedial measures. Whereas the early one is simply the smart design, planning and detailing, more importantly done at the right stage. So these are the two approaches which need to be looked at. Unfortunately, we are not looking at the first option. Even as a part of, as a member of Bijapur Urban Development and Authority, so we don't have even a representation from engineers fraternity or architects fraternity when it comes to taking the decisions of developing these neighborhoods are concerned. So unfortunately, we need to have a system, or the government has to frame a policy wherein there is going to be an active participation from all the players in this field. Then in the Indian context, as Indians, we have a sustainable outlook towards life in itself in general, which I talked about a little while ago. We have been living sustainable lives since generations. This bank of wisdom is our legacy today, and the onus is on us to see how it can be taken forward. So this outlook has embraced all walks of life, be it alternative medicine, social response, sustainability of the built environment, rich and diverse vernacular traditions. Our rich vernacular traditions actually start from the natural settings of the city or the site, and response to metaphysical concerns, climate, local skills and materials, and appropriate technology. So more importantly, it is a passive approach and thus less energy intensive. These are proven technologies and often scalable. So in the next presentation, we will be, I'll just have a detailed discussion of on this aspect. Then when it comes to the role of a typical architect, so one has to provide technical support to the developers, then plan supporting infrastructure, design the built environment, guide the contractors, help clients visualize their dreams, and guide policy makers. So again, the role of a typical ideal architect should have been the other ways, so protecting Mother Earth, social awareness, affordable architecture, harvest and conserve energy, sustainability from the different perspective. So the idea is to reduce, reuse, restore, recycle, and regenerate. So one of the way of achieving this sustainable architecture is by vernacular architecture. So what vernacular architecture means is it's the term used to categorize methods of construction which use locally available resources and traditions to address local needs. vernacular architecture tends to evolve over the time to reflect the environmental, cultural and historic context in which it exists. Then, is it sustainable? So, if we talk about the vernacular architecture could be understood as the building traditions which have been developed by the people over generations and often built by themselves. These are tried and tested practices which have actually sustained the ravages of time. They have been handed down through the generations. They rely on passive measures by and large and respond to the context. Basically, it is architecture without architects. So vernacular is wisdom applied in a traditional architecture. So the basis of vernacular is that it responds to several contextual aspects. It responds to climate, it responds to place, it responds to culture, material, local skills and also maintenance, durability and metaphysical aspects. The premise is that the vernacular tradition was extremely sustainable in every sense of the word. So there are different ways of looking at this. So vernacular, we have vernacular architecture. So it is also about the languages. Then it's also about nativity. It is also about nature. It is also about the value addition that we have, and it's also about adaptability. Then also about earliest, like it is very primitive one. Then again it is also about ancestors. It is also about circulation, and finally it is also about aesthetics. So that ends our second presentation. But so coming to third part of it, wherein as I said, like in the third part, we are looking at some of the, a journey through India, and where we have sustainable practices responding to the climate, responding to the context, responding to the cultures. So the journey of sustainability, the Indian vernacular and beyond. So basically India has different climatic regions. So India is the land of varied climatic zones. So in the western part we have hot and dry, so central being composite. The coastline is warm and humid. The northern part is cold. Some part of the South Deccan is temperate. So depending upon the various climatic zones, so we see different buildings coming out of the responses to these climatic zones. So India, India is a vast, stunning, pluralistic country. The discovery and deeper understanding of sustainable buildings in India needs one to travel across India and understand its vast diversity, cultural heritage and traditional knowledge. So as one travels across this beautiful, pluralistic and diverse country, where every few hundred kilometers you travel, you have the people, the language, the clothing, the food, the spices, the culture, the festivals, the markets, the streets, the hawkers, the beliefs, the perceptions and notions, and of course the architecture and design of buildings constantly change. The true notion of sustainability change with time and context. So in the extreme northern part of the country, where we have Leh Ladakh region, the humane characteristics of the buildings using an architectural vocabulary that seems absolute. The vertical stacking of the buildings on the slope, on the hills, result in individual houses catching the sun's rays, as the sun rays are the most natural and critical resource for survival. So in these cold regions, and the dependency on sunlight to maintain the comfortable conditions is completed by the traditional building materials such as earth, timber and construction techniques with high thermal insulating properties. Then these buildings are there for centuries, and they are not just houses but also magnificent monasteries and the palaces in the region, and they utilize and the sunlight to enter the building. They utilize heat from the cooking appliances, trap heat by providing sun spaces and thermal lag through thick drum wall construction. So these timber lintels and plaster bands that we have, so actually they distinguishable features of the Ladakhi architecture, and but the evolution is not just for aesthetic purposes. Made of layers of timber, these lintels act as thermal barrier and prevent the loss of heat due to conduction from the wall, keeping the building warm in the cold climate. As one travels from southwards towards the Piddi in Himachal, one witnesses buildings that illustrate a highly evolved traditional understanding of the manipulating the extreme climatic conditions, just like in Ladakh, resulting in survival of human beings for centuries. So the villagers did not have to look far for the resources. With the sun above and earth below and some wood and stone, they built the grand temples, the humble houses and the granaries. As one travels further south towards Manali, one can feel the Himalayas transform. The weather changes, the language, the traditions of the course, the architecture. Even in this high seismic zones, at times the buildings would be as high as 7 stories and have intricate carvings, wooden carvings, and the name of the technique is cart kuni. So the cart for wood and kuni meaning corner. These buildings were environmentally friendly, kept the cold out, could survive earthquakes due to its high strength, tensile strength, and only needed two most locally available resources and had basic comforts needed for the harsh Himalayas. So we'll just breeze through some of the images of different regions. So if you come to the eastern parts, then we have different techniques altogether. Then we have towards western part of north and the northwestern part. So we have as one continues to north and also being to new lands, new terrains, new landings, one feels a sea of change with its enormous courts, palaces, intricately carved temples, lakes, gardens, busy bazaars, and rich calmer makes it one of the most experienced travel like. So these are the these are all things that are one can see coming out of context, coming out of climatic needs, coming out of societal needs. So we, as we breeze through these images, we see the vastness of Indian knowledge system. Coming to last part of it rather, so wherein we are talking about the architecture is not created in a vacuum. So it is a compulsive expression of beliefs central to our lives. When we look at architectural heritage of India, we find an incredibly rich reservoir, all coexisting in an easy and natural pluralism. It is their continuing presence in our life that creates a pluralistic society of India today. But unfortunately, at the same time, across the country, one can see this. This is not the India that we envisage. So imagine a world where traveling in Jaipur and traveling in Mumbai or Cochin are going back are going to look the same. When we come across glass scrapers in a heritage city, it is possible to perceive how insiders and lethal it could prove to look around India today. So tragic indeed for this to happen in a land that one conceived architecture as a model of cosmos. This leads to a loss of Indian ethos that we have conserved for centuries. So it is important for the architect and engineers of today to travel, explore and know the diverse country. Modernity is only one of the many overlays that constitute India. It is essential that the first step is understanding the indigenous traditions and technology of India, from which the contextual design shall emerge. So we don't have to go for lessons in sustainability. They already exist around us, and this is a phenomenon happening in the world over. There is so much to travel, explore and rediscover in our country. All one needs to do is look around, because a sustainable world already exists. So with that, I think we will conclude here. Thank you very much for the time.